Joining me now from Los Angeles, California, trial attorney Christa Ramey. Christa, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Great to see you.
Great to see you again.
All right, so let me start off by talking a little bit about some of the evidence we saw today. It's day 8 of the trial, and finally they're starting to really connect the defendant. I think this gasoline evidence, while there is a way to explain how it could get on his shoes in other ways, when taken with the totality of what's going on here, I think it's fairly powerful evidence. Your thoughts?
I do. It's connecting those dots. True, there are other ways to explain gasoline on your shoes, certainly. But in this particular context, it is not as much explainable. And I always say, if you're explaining something in court, then you're losing. And so I think that it was nice to start seeing that connect, because so far we're hearing about what is probably one of the most horrific arson cases I've ever heard. The description by the fire inspectors today was just heartbreaking. And now beginning to be able to connect to this particular defendant, it's starting to feel like we're moving towards that point of seeing the real evidence here in this case of where the rubber meets the road, if you will.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? The horrific nature of the crimes, actually, for me, it's interesting. It cuts both ways. One, you say, okay, it's really awful. Someone needs to pay. But then you look at the man, Stanley Ford. We've had a couple of people, 2 or 3, his neighbors come into the courtroom and testify that he was a nice guy. He was nice to them, didn't have any problems with them, considered himself the protector of the neighborhood. One woman says she didn't think he did it because he had children of his own. And when you look at the fact that he has children of his own, anyone who has children, how could they commit a crime like this? That's a question that I legitimately would have. And when you talk about the motive, just some issues with neighbors, that's, I think, a little bit of a hurdle that the prosecution has to overcome.
I do, but I also think that when you're talking about mental illness, which may be, in play here a little bit, according to his own brother, I guess, and someone being a little off, you're not talking about the people that can do something like this are not people like you and me that are, family people, that are parents, perhaps, that love our children and want to see other children grow and thrive. This is a different type of connection. And we all have lived in neighborhoods or have had friends that live in neighborhoods where there's that busybody neighbor that's always up in everybody's business and always trying to get involved and stop things from happening, and don't park in front of my house. And when these two things collide, this mental illness, this anger that you're having towards your other neighbors, and this pattern of neighbors' houses getting burned down after confrontations with him, I think that you're starting to build a pretty powerful connection.
Yeah, this issue of mental illness, it's not necessarily a part of the trial. I'm sure it'll be a part of the death penalty phase if he's convicted. There was actually a competency issue early on. It was actually spurred on by the judge because of some of the things that he was saying that seemed rather odd. And it was found that there was some deterioration in the brain. And I want to ask you quickly, we have a couple of seconds left here. That's not going to be a part of this trial. That's clear. But clearly, when you talk about the death penalty and someone who has this type of issue, do you think that they're going to put someone to death who has those issues?
Well, that is where it exactly comes into play, because that becomes an Eighth Amendment issue, a cruel and unusual punishment issue. And the Supreme Court is pretty clear that you cannot put someone to death that has mental, if there are certain types of mental illness in play. So there is a whole body of case law on this very point. So yes, the short answer to your question is this will come into play during the penalty phase.
Absolutely. We may not hear about it in trial, but certainly in that penalty phase, if in fact there is one.